And it's Tuesday night, and we are tuning in with Jess down in Tampa, Florida.
Yes.
So you decided to get out of Cleveland, and you decided to do it in the fall.
Yes, it just happened that way. I'm calling it like my early midlife
Yeah.
crisis start like in spring
Mm-hmm.
and summer. And by the time I decided to sell my house, got it sold and moved, it worked out that we got here October 29th,
Oh.
which
And
was very, very nice. So we haven't experienced, and I say we because Zoe and we have not experienced a summer yet.
and
So we'll see how that goes.
and Zoe is your pet boa constrictor?
No, she is my Doberman puppy.
Oh.
She's currently asleep on the couch right now, which is really nice. So hopefully she'll stay that way for this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have folks jumping on right now. I see Mindy, and she just gave us a big Jess. And with a long row of S's.
I got my mom. No, she is my Doberman puppy. I'm trying to share it, and of course I'm failing.
Well, folks, we appreciate you joining us. It's Tuesday night. It's the end of April in 2020, and it feels as though this coronavirus may be shifting down just a little bit. It's by no means gone. Everybody's still in lockdown, but it feels like it's shifting down. What's going on with coronavirus down in Florida?
Well, we're kind of like every other weird story that you see on the news, like people trying to hug alligators. We're also the state that was last to do anything about it. You know, we were on the news because spring breakers were still on the beach and things were still open. I was not on the beach because I was raised in Ohio. My mom would have killed me. So I was indoors, but they're talking now about opening things back up because in the state of Florida, the biggest income is tourism. And so that's really hit the economy hard. But it's still nice to have nice weather, so you can still go for a walk or a run and get outside for that.
What's the weather like today?
It's quite beautiful. It's like in the 80s and sunny, so I can't complain.
Yeah. At least people are getting out. Are they wearing masks out? Are they rollerblading out there? What are Floridarians doing?
All of the above. I've seen more people rollerblading, which I thought was dead like the dodo bird, but it is coming back. And along with kayaking, everybody is buying a kayak. And I've seen scooters and skateboards, all sorts of things. People are getting very creative to get outside.
I'm seeing a lot of even young people, but a lot of people riding their bikes. I'm like, people own bikes, and they're riding around the neighborhood and around the parks and down on the towpath.
Yeah, which is nice. I'm sure that that's happening here. The thing I learned about Florida when I got here is that because it's such a mixed state of transplants, senior citizens, college students, that there's a ton of accidents. Like every billboard is like, have you gone to an automotive accident? We can help you. So there's not, when you bike ride, you kind of have to go where it's safe. Otherwise, you might be hit by someone who doesn't live here, doesn't know the roads, apparently.
Or if you go riding down the bike path, and there's somebody out there, they might have a surprise waiting for you, like on the Tiger King, right? Carol, she wants to go for a bike ride. We got to be careful down in Florida.
Yes, so I found out I'm in 6 degrees of separation of her.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Before we start our interview, you have to share this story.
So, and I don't even know if my friend Corey is watching, but when I first got down here, I met up with a bunch of new dive friends. And through that, we ended up going to Tampa Bay Roller Derby draft night, which was awesome. And it was a super cool night. Met a lot of really, really great people. And Corey is the manager of the team, really great guy. And we had a conversation recently about Netflix. And he's like, yeah, the team actually sponsors one of the tigers at Carol's sanctuary. And I was like, so you're telling me I'm basically in 6 degrees of separation of Carol? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, thank God I'm not dead. I mean,
all right. Did she do it?
You know, I want to say yes. Between us, I think she's shady as hell and crazy. You can just see that twinkle of cray-cray in her eyes. I've watched enough Snap episodes where I feel like she did it.
Yeah, I have to say, I see that same, like you say, I can't define it, but it's just a crazy look. And she has a weird smile too. And so I see it in two places.
And she laughs after everything she says. She's like, oh, we couldn't find his will. Oh, like in a really weird way. So I think that she definitely she knows where his body is. I don't know if she fed him to the tigers, but I hadn't even heard of it. Like after it dropped on Netflix, I was at the dog park and two other dog park parents were like, oh, we're watching Tiger King. I came inside and because of quarantine, I like killed it in a day.
Yeah.
Like you can't not watch it. So.
Well, thank you for that. That's a great intro. And as we're just letting people sign on. If you are new to Tuesday at 7, we encourage you to share out to your friends or to a group. You can even share it out to specific individuals if that's what you like to do. Everybody who shares goes in a drawing. Their names go into a drawing for something super cool. And do you want to give us an early peek at what we're giving away next week, or do you want to save that?
We can save it.
All right, save it. We'll save it. But
okay.
It is super cool. So do not wait on sharing. Share out early. But last week, and I'm pretty sure that I saw your name, out there as well. So we went down to Dallas, Texas, remotely, with Alan Hops. And Alan Hops is a sculptor, mask maker, all around. Is he amazing?
Super talented. Yeah.
Yeah. And for the shares, he donated an apocalypse mask, which is very apropos for this time. And we have a whole bunch of names. And so if you were here, I'd have you reach in and pull out a name. But since go ahead. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Oh, all right. Wait, here's the name here. Somebody's going to get a great mask tonight. And I like to open it up right here in front of. And is George Ball. George Ball. So you are the winner of the Apocalypse Mask. We will connect and get your information so Alan can drop that mask out to you in the next week or so. Thank you for sharing. But Jess, we're ready to talk to you today and hear your story. I know parts of your story. I don't know the story in the real gritty story, and I'm hoping that you share some of that today. But I always start off with an unexpected question, and this one, I might regret asking this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I'm super honest, Roger.
You are super honest. So let's say you're down someplace, and you happen to be near a net that gets drawn up to the surface, and there's 3 creatures in that net. Those creatures are a manatee, a porpoise, and a shark. A manatee, a porpoise, and a shark. Now, I'm not asking you to choose one. I'm saying, in what order would you work to free those creatures? And I mean, you can. There's no right or wrong answer, obviously, and you can give an explanation.
I would say probably it would go in, depending on what species of shark, porpoise, and then manatee, because a lot of sharks have to stay moving in order to stay alive, whereas manatees can kind of float there. So that would be my answer. And also depending on how badly each one of them is wrapped up, that would also depend, because a lot of times netting can get wrapped up around the animal so badly that it can just suffocate them even before drowning. So I'm glad you didn't ask me if I had to pick one, because that would have been very difficult.
That would have been difficult, and that felt cruel. But I love your answer, because you're already strategizing about saving all 3 and how you would do that, right?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
That's a very good question. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on Tuesday at 7. I am so incredibly stoked to be here. Yeah, it's a huge honor, so thank you.
Absolutely. We are honored to hear what you have to offer because we know it's greatness. But take us back. And you and I had talked before, and there's no real definition to back, but take us back to early years and tell us about when you first realized that creativity was kind of part of who you were and that it might be what you practiced for a lifetime.
Yeah, so ever since I was little, I mean, I feel like I came out of the womb with a box of crayons. My dad is also a graduate of the Cleveland Institute of Art, so art was always really big in our house. And my father is incredibly, incredibly talented. I mean, even if he's never done something before, he can watch a YouTube video or like read a book, and all of a sudden he's like a master badass at it. So we always were doing, projects around the house or doing art projects. Every year before school, I always had to have a fresh box of crayons because that's what you do when you're an art kid. Yeah. And it just, everything that I did revolved around creativity. I mean, even at a very, very young age, I think I might have been 3 or 4. I was in my first play, and I still remember it. It was a bookworm theater production for little kids, and it was a bunch of bookworms, and I was Dracula bookworm, which I was super excited about, and I had one line. But everything growing up in my life was always pretty much around arts. I did some sports stuff like swimming, tried golf, but it always just came back to a creative thing.
So you knew early on.
Yeah, it just was something that I loved using my imagination, and I loved being able to create. There's just something about creating that makes me feel fulfilled. If I can't create and design or make stuff, I feel like dead in the water. I just feel stifled.
So your father was an artist, a graduate of the Cleveland Institute of Arts, and
yeah.
What role did he play and your mom play in terms of that early development?
Well, it's funny because I know that they're watching right now. My mom would say that she couldn't draw a stick person to save her life. And she's also colorblind. So she can't see red from orange or blues from greens. And apparently, I'm not fessing up to this, but apparently, allegedly, when I was little, we would play Candyland and I would lie about what color I landed on to win. So apparently I was a little bit of a little shit. So I was always getting my drawing side from my father, and my mom always kept saying, God, I'm stuck with 2 artists. What am I going to do? And then once I decided to go into art school, my mom's like, great, now I have to go through this process again. Because it is, anyone who's been to an art school, it's incredibly grueling. It's like going to law school or doctorate school, but there is no right answer. In accounting, 2 + 2 is 4, but for design and art, everything's subjective. You can make something and you put your heart and soul in it, and you feel like you're putting you out there and people are judging it. So you have to learn to separate that. If someone doesn't like what you do, it doesn't mean that they don't like you. And that's a growing up thing. That's a process in itself.
Do you think that in your specific case, do you think that some of your skills are nature or nurture? So genetic or environmental?
I'm going to say 50-50 because my father is an amazing painter. And when I was at CIA, I did amazing at design class, but painting class, my first year, my painting professor literally told me, you are terrible. I don't even understand how you got into this school. I suck at painting. If I get to the gates of heaven and they're like, you need to paint something to get in, I'm going to be just send me downstairs. You don't even want to see it. It's just not my forte. I'm very much a 3D type artist, or, I have to really work it to get a good painting or drawing. I mean, I can do it. It's just not my forte. So they blessed me with some skills, but definitely not everything.
So box of crayons, early years, you start to move into the classes. You do Dracula, right? A little bit of theater, only 1 line. What comes next? And help me understand, are those middle school years? Are those early high school years?
So that was elementary school, and I actually ended up doing theater all the way up through high school. And at the end of high school, when I was deciding what to do, it was either I almost went to school for theater, genetics, like scientific genetics, DNA, or art school. But previously to that, I had really gotten into three-dimensional stuff. When I was little, I was told this story. I vaguely remember it, but relating to all of my ocean stuff now, my parents say that I spent the entire day in my bedroom working on something, like feverishly. I was in there the whole day, and I came out with this Tupperware container with paper, like cardboard fish. And I said, look at my pet, look at my fish tank, isn't it so cute? And they felt so bad that I had made my own pet, which that won't be the first time in my life that I've done that. Happens again in college, but that I came out with it, that they then went and bought a fish tank. And after that, we had a fish tank, we had frogs, they put a pond in the backyard. I'm very, very blessed to have such amazing parents. They really nurtured anything that I was interested in. And we had a tank of death, we called it. Anything that went in it ended up dying. So I definitely put them through the ringer when I said that I wanted a fish tank, because frogs got loose in the house. I mean, it was fun.
That's probably some of those early seeds that found their way to your love of water creatures and perhaps saltwater conservation. I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're totally right. And it's funny that you say that, because going back through some of my art stuff that my mother kept, there was actually a research piece that I had to do in grade school, and I had done it on the abyss. And my mom always says that if there's A, B, or C, and A is easy and C, I always pick C. So I started getting into three-dimensional stuff when there was a research project and we had to either do a poster board or we could do an art piece. I'm like, okay, I'm going to build the Coliseum on popsicle sticks. And I remember being in the wood shop with my dad, and I had glued together all these popsicle sticks, and on the jigsaw we're like cutting them so they can fit into the Coliseum, and foam, and it was huge. It was massive. So from a young age, it just kind of was always there, increasing, and everything just kind of built up to going to art school.
You mentioned that you and your father were both Cleveland Institute of Art. So did you go straight there from high school?
Yes, and they did not want me originally to go to art school, because I am, if you know me, and you know me well, I am super emotional. Like, I am born a softie. I'm a Cancer. Like, Cancers are known to be emotional. And they said, you go to art school, it's going to be grueling. Like, you're going to have to get a tough skin, and it's going to be a rough road, but and it's expensive. And I said, no, this is what I'm doing, so support me, or either way I'm going. And so they said, fine, all right, you're Jess. Once you make up your mind, you do it anyway, so go for it. So yeah, I went there straight after high school graduation.
And you revealed that you were not a painting major. What was your area of study there?
I ended up originally going to CIA for automotive design. I had my heart set on designing cars. My father has a 1972 Corvette, so I grew up around sports cars. And even to this day, I will say that is my car. When I was little, I would like pat it when he was washing me, like, mine. And I've just always had a passion for that. And so being able to combine art, design, and automotive, I thought it would be perfect. And when I got there, I felt like it was like Mad Men all over again. And it's very male dominated. And I was one of two females in the automotive class, and it was grueling. I mean, I turned into such a mean, defensive person, because in a female in that world, I personally feel, and this is just my experience, that you have to be so tough to combat just the male forces, that I finally, after a semester, was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I've turned into a bitch. My friends are like, you are. Mm-mm. So then I finished the year in industrial design, doing product design with a focus on toy design. So that was the original plan. But as they say, you make plans and God laughs. So he's been laughing a lot throughout my life.
So you're on a path at the Cleveland Institute of Arts, and you find were those years formative in what you're doing now, or were they I got to get out of here so that I can then figure out who Jess Adanich is?
Oh no, it was incredibly formative. I don't think that I know that I would not be the person I am today without going there. And when I went, I was actually in the last year of the 5-year program. So I had 2 years of foundation. You apply to your major, and if you get accepted, then you get to go into it. So when I had switched to sculpture, I had no idea what the hell I was going to do. I just knew that after a year in industrial design, I mean, I loved it, but something was like calling in me that I didn't want to design stuff that was ultimately going to end up in a landfill. Like, I remember working on a product, our little group, because they broke us up into groups, we were working on a hairdryer project. And I, designed this ergonomical handle and this and that, and you had to do like user testing. And I just was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this hairdryer is going to get mass produced. People are going to use it. And then because of the way they make products, then it's going to end up in a landfill. And I just had this weird conscience about, putting more into that kind of system that we have in place. And I switched to sculpture without having any plan about what I was going to do. No idea. And that did not exactly make my family happy at the time, but they got on board and said, you know what, you need to trust your gut. And anything that I've done, now looking back on my life, I've always gone through this process of, I feel in my gut that something's calling to me, and I think about it and I pray about it, and then somehow like things happen where I'm shown a sign and I have to go for it. And I feel like where I am now, there's been those various phases that have taken me to where I am now.
So those of you who are joining us, we have people even just clicking in right now. We started off the conversation. We had a short little discussion about 6 Degrees of Cheryl or
Carol Baskins.
Carol Baskins, right? We then went into some of those early years, and right now we are talking about Jess's college years. And for everybody who shares this video, Jess is gonna. Should we reveal now, or should we reveal in a bit? Or can we see something that you're gonna be giving away?
We're gonna be giving away an actual fuzzy shark, which is hard to see, but
wow,
it's huge.
So what we were gonna do is we're gonna get to the whole story behind Fuzzy Shark, but you revealed that it's gonna be a pretty big sculptural giveaway, and
yes.
And that's amazing. But now, did you graduate with that concentration in sculpting or sculpture?
Yes. Yeah. So I ended up, once I got into sculpture, I ended up making a lot of bad art, like a lot of bad stuff. There was one point in time where I wanted to do contemporary type furniture. So I picked up a couch on the side of the street and had cut it up with like a hacksaw, and I was going to like rebuild it, but it sat in the studio for 3 months. And the professor finally was like, you need to throw that shit out because you're not going to do anything with it. And I was like, you're right. So I one day had this inclination to sew something. I have no idea where it came from, but I ended up going to the fabric store with my friend Meg, and I bought a bunch of fabric that I had no idea what it was. I had never really sewn. Like, I had sewn when I was little, but I didn't know the difference between like prom fabric and synthetic and silk and cotton. I just bought a bunch of like different stuff that I thought was pretty, and I made my own pattern for a bubble-eyed goldfish, and I sewed it by hand. And my mother even said, why won't you just use the sewing machine? It's going to be so much easier. And I was like, I like doing it authentic. She's like, no, use a sewing machine. And so I ended up making a second one and used a sewing machine, and it went much easier. And then after that, I ended up making a stingray, a deep sea octopus, a lobster, which you now have, and a sea turtle. And finally, at that point, my professor was like, there's clearly something here. You need to do some research and understand why you're sewing sea creatures. And at that point, I found a lot of documentaries. And at the time, a documentary called Shark Water was just released. And it's a pretty big documentary in the ocean conservation world. Unfortunately, the producer passed a few years ago, but it dives into, pun intended, the issue that we have with sharks across the whole globe right now. And it goes back to the Ming Dynasty in China, where it's a cultural, basically, tradition to cut the fins off of a shark and use it to make soup. And it doesn't add any flavor to the soup, it just adds texture. And because of that, across the globe, we have lost millions and millions of sharks because once you cut their fins off, they can't swim and they die. And when you're on a boat, you can only take on so much weight. So people in these third world countries where there's not a lot of industry, they can go out and cut the shark fins off, put them on the boat, get a massive amount of fins, then go back to shore, sell them, and they have money for their family. And it's incredibly sad because sharks reproduce at such a slow rate and they only have so many pups, so they can't reproduce as quickly as they're being killed. And once I found that out, along with bycatch and overfish and the pollution, my heart literally just got really sick and broke. I mean, there's a lot of sad things in the world, like, you know, dying puppies and abandoned kittens and things like that. But for some reason, I just felt like a part of me had like shriveled up and was dying when I heard that. So I then devoted my entire rest of my art career at CIA making artwork to teach people about ocean conservation.
Little did you know that you were folding little sea creatures at that early age, which resulted in a fishbowl and some pets and a pond in the backyard. You find yourself going to the Cleveland Institute of Art, moving through your design semesters. You find yourself in a sculpture, and now you're creating these sculptural pieces with a focus on sea creatures, right?
Yeah. And on the other side of that, when I had moved from automotive to sculpture, I realized that I needed a backup plan. So I had an industrial design portfolio. I ended up going to, and knowing that you're in Northeast Ohio, you might have heard of Jim Brickman. Mm-hmm. He's a piano player. And at the time I had somehow like 6 degrees of separation, knew someone whose fiance at the time worked for Jim. And she said they're looking for an intern for graphic design. And I was like, well, I'd been doing graphic design since high school because I was in a vocational. So I got an interview with them, and I walked in with an automotive product design portfolio. And I was like, all right, this is my portfolio, but I'm telling you, I can do graphic design. Just give me a shot. And I basically convinced him to give me a job, and he did. And I ended up working for Jim Brickman for 3 years. And I completely overhauled his branding. I did all of his design assets for his United States tour, merch, his branding, VIP stuff. So that was all happening in the background as I was making ocean artwork, which now you can now see the parallels of my life having the company I have now, plus trying to save sharks.
Yeah. So where does it go from there, right? So you finish with that internship, and then where?
I graduated in 2009, and the economy crashed. Any job that I tried to get out of state just wasn't happening because no one was going to pay to relocate. They weren't really hiring, especially in the creative world. That just wasn't happening. So I bounced around locally in Cleveland. I did some contract work actually for Nerf. I was a soft good engineer for the Nerf department at Hasbro, which was super badass. And I got a lot of Nerf guns, which who doesn't love that? And I appreciate it because my parents are now housing them for me. And then I worked for Vitamix for a little bit, a very large commercial real estate company. I've worked as a digital retoucher for a large photography studio in Cleveland. And around that time, I think it was 2013 or 2012, that I had heard that Mace was coming to town, as in the pepper spray company. And they were looking for a head of their marketing design department. And just by, the grace of God and having the portfolio that I had, I got an interview with them. And next thing I know, I'm working at Mace and running their marketing and design department.
And what a thing to add to that portfolio, because now you're in personal defense.
Yes.
Right? And so what does that feel like to go that direction? And I'm interested in hearing, was that time that you spent with Mace, did it sidetrack you? Did it add, or?
It did. I was actually born and raised like on the gun range. My father's a competition shooter. He's very, very good. And so I was born and raised around firearms. So to work for a self-defense company was actually something that I was passionate about. You know, going back to why I moved out of industrial design, I wanted to use my creative powers for good. And anytime that I worked for a company, I wanted to make sure that I was putting all my efforts into being a benefit to society, making sure that either I was helping individuals or putting something back into the world that was positive. And to work for Mace, I loved it. I mean, to go to a company every day where I could help put products out there to save someone's life from assault, rape, violence, domestic violence. I mean, that was amazing to me. Not to mention, it really kicked off my career. I mean, I think I was mid-20s when I was handed this high-level position, and they said, okay, go for it. And at the very beginning, I remember sitting in my tiny office calling my mom, being like, they hired the wrong person. They hired the wrong person. You know, fake it till you make it. And it ended up being really, really good. And I made lifelong friends there, and it made me a better designer, for sure. And I love that industry, and I'm actually now back in it with my company that I have now, and I'm very blessed to be there. I'm a big fan of it, but it's also a dynamic because I have this like self-defense firearms world, and then I also have like the ocean world. They're very different mindsets, and sometimes different in politics. So it's fun.
It probably keeps you in balance, right?
Yes. It does. It does. And I like being able to see both sides of everything, mm-hmm. You know, whether it's politics or people's opinions. It really gives me a broad spectrum of where the world stands. And I never thought, if you had told me, do you think that you'd be in the self-defense industry right now? I never would have thought that. But now there's things that I have like these surreal moments. And I'm sure that every artist and designer or even just business person has these moments where stuff comes out of your mouth and you can't believe that you're saying it. Like, how did I know that? How did I get smart? When did that happen?
And so you're working for Mace in Northeast Ohio, and then what? Because you're not at Mace, you're not in Northeast Ohio anymore.
No, I'm not. So during that time, when I had graduated from the Cleveland Institute of Art, I had started an organization side business called Ocean 4. And it was called Ocean 4 because when I created it, they had only defined 4 oceans. That's how tells you how long ago it was, because now there's 5 that they've deemed. And I had tried to get that moving and going, but in Northeast Ohio, big surprise, no one cares about the oceans. They don't even care about the lake. And I had found that while I was at Mace, I was putting so much time and effort into the corporate world and my career that I lost myself. There were things that were changing at Mace, and it made me realize what happened to my life, to my dreams, to my goals. I found myself that I was living back in my hometown city, which I said I would never move back to Parma, and I did. I had a house. I was gardening. I was doing all this stuff because I thought that was what I had to do. How could I sell my house, move my entire life to a different city? Like, that just didn't seem possible. But one day I woke up and I said, I'm going to sell my house. And so I'm now in Tampa. But I did that because at the end of 2018, I ended up resigning from Mace to start my own company.
So you start your own company. You're like, I'm going to make a big change. I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to leave Ohio, and I'm going to go to Florida. How did that decision to go to Florida? How did that occur? Because I knowing you, I'm just thinking to myself, she needs to get near water, right?
Yeah. It was a similar experience as when I decided to switch degrees, and I decided to go to college. And also when I decided to resign from Mace, that was huge. We had gone to a security conference in Vegas. We weren't even there 24 hours, which to fly to Vegas and back for 24 hours is ridiculous. And I remember being there with one of my good friends, business colleagues. We were in an Irish pub at like midnight, at the hotel that we were staying at. And I said, Mike, do you think it would be crazy if I resigned from Mace and started my own company? He's like, no. And I was like, okay. So literally the next day I'm in the cab with my CEO and I just word vomit. I couldn't even stop. John, what would you think if I resigned and started my own agency and Mace was my first client? I was like, think about it. It's a Friday. Marinate on it. Get back to me on Monday. And Monday, I walk into his office. He's like, let's do it. He's like, let's do a contract. And so within like 24 hours, 3 days, I had essentially quit my job. And at that, I mean, how do you just do that? I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I never had my own company. And Florida, the decision to do Florida was kind of very similar, where things just happened in my brain and I had prayed about it. And I just had this calling that God wanted me to live my life, my calling, and it wasn't in Ohio anymore. And I needed to get to the ocean, and I researched cities. I had a list of criteria. I'd never been to Tampa, ever. So I picked a city that I had never been to and that I didn't know anyone. I moved to the apartment sight unseen. I had just seen pictures, and it was the best decision in my life. I love it.
So I'm gonna touch my camera here, and I'm gonna flip down. We have a whole bunch of people watching, and we've got comments. We're gonna get back to you. Pack up your stuff. You go to Florida, and then we're gonna come back to that. We have there's a lot of people kind of just jumping in and making comments. A lot of comments. A lot of folks that know you from the Art Exchange.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we got Dave Duarte. We've got, of course, Mindy. We got Ashley Jordan. These are all people that you know from the Art Exchange.
Everyone.
Lauren, is it Naji or not? Is that how you say her last name? Because she's watching as well. Karen Murphy, just a bunch of folks that are jumping in, and Debbie's on there. How are you guys doing? I appreciate you all on there. And Lauren and I know each other from doing some portrait drawing.
Nice.
And we have a question here, and a question is not surprising that it's coming from Jim Cermak because he's an inquiring mind. Wow, there's a lot of comments here. And Jason Plavich.
Yeah,
Plavic says best designer ever. So he probably knows a bit about your design. We're gonna maybe come back to that.
He came to the Art Exchange party.
Oh, was that?
Yeah.
See, thanks for connecting that dot. Jim Cermak, his question was: has there ever been a project you worked on that unexpectedly was hugely successful?
Yeah, great question, Jim. Thank you. I would say it would have been the redesign of the Mace packaging. When I was at Mace, myself and a few other colleagues had pitched to the overall team that we really needed to overhaul the packaging. It was in a clamshell, and we wanted to upgrade it to be more eco-friendly and look better. And because of me, I was like, we need to submit to some design awards. And we ended up doing a great job with the overhaul and submitted to an international design award. And we ended up winning for one of the categories. And that was huge. Not to mention when our sales team went to, Dick's Sporting Good and Walmart and Ace and all these big retailers, all of the buyers were like, this is really, really nice. Like, this is going to stand out on the shelf. And to me as a designer, I went into Home Depot and took selfies with the pepper spray, packaging, which I probably looked like a goof, but to me, I was like, I love doing packaging design. And that working at Mace made me realize that I feel like it's in my wheelhouse. I'm good at it, and I really, really enjoy it. And the whole team did a great job, and we worked really, really well together. And I don't think any of us thought that it was going to come out that well, especially for a pepper spray company. When I got there, everyone thought design should be kind of, it's there. But my feeling is that whether you're a tissue box, an Apple computer, or a pepper spray, design matters. Design makes the world go round. And makes products sell. And that's a big thing for a product company.
And you were listed, and I know that you're humbly about, but some of those awards were like best designer, right? Like top designer, best in the world.
Yeah, for that design award, they specifically then rank designers for specific categories, and that year I was ranked in a very good number as being one of the best designers in the world, which is very, very nice. And along with it, I did win some other specific security design awards. I believe I won like a best women's and security design specialist award or something like that. But it's a huge honor. It's very, very nice.
Well, thank you for answering that question. We got a question from Beth Ryan Miller.
Yes.
And her question is, are you planning on publishing another journal or Journal Plus?
So that, I don't know. And that's a good question, because I would love to, because I think that, so going back, and I actually have the very first one that I did. So it all started with, I'm very open about it, but I battle with anxiety and depression. And so I was going to a counselor at a time, and being who I am, I love having like homework, and she would give me assignments, and I ended up going to like Blurb and designing my own positive journal. And there's prompts in here with little graphics, and you fill it out daily. And she said, you literally designed your own journal and got it printed. And I was like, well, yeah, because that's what I do, overachiever. And she said, you should design one that everyone can use, because in here there's like something I love about the ocean and like really specific stuff. So I ended up then self-publishing my first copy, and then I changed publishing houses and did it again. But it fell on the back burner because it just didn't get the sales that I wanted. Self-publishing, and Jim, I'm sure, knows a lot about this too. Self-publishing is a bitch. Like, they don't tell you all the loopholes that you have to jump through, and you have to really invest a lot of money to get out there. So I don't know if I will. Maybe after I do the ocean thing some more, I'll get back into that.
So designer, soft sculptor, author, throw up your hands and move to Florida kind of girl, right?
Yeah.
So you find yourself in Tampa. You pack up your stuff. You've got Zoe, your dog with you. You come down there. You unpack, and now what?
I ended up finding out that down here is a convention called SharkCon, which I had no idea. I had joined a bunch of local dive pages because I'm also scuba certified. 2 years ago, I finally got out of my head that I shouldn't be insecure about the way I look, because nobody looks good in a wetsuit. Like, I don't care who you are. No one does. And that put me off from getting dive certified for a really long time. But I finally did it 2 years ago. And that was another reason to come down here, because diving in quarries is great, but I want to see some stuff, not just quarry fish and sunken buses. And so I joined a lot of groups down here, and I found on one of the pages somebody talking about SharkCon, and I was like, what? I moved to a city, the only city in the entire country that has a convention just for sharks. I mean, talk about the stars aligning and me truly listening to like God's plan for me, because how do I end up, out of all the cities I could have picked, the one city that has a convention for sharks? So I now have a booth for SharkCon. Fingers crossed that it either still happens or, at some point will, because of this whole COVID thing. But I'm very, very excited. And with that, I've rebranded all my ocean stuff, and I'm working on putting together a booth for it.
So if you would tease us with that giveaway for next week, that fuzzy shark there.
And there will be a tail on it when I ship it. My parents had just vacuum sealed them in a bag, and so I had to like re-put them together. But it is a giant fuzzy shark.
Tell us the whole idea behind fuzzy shark. I mean, why isn't it a leather shark, or why isn't it something else?
So in my research, when I had back in college, and I'm kind of like resurrecting them as a launch to rebranding, I had done some scientific research on theories, and biophilia is a theory that things are cute, so we take care of them. So when babies are born, they have proportions, their eyes are bigger, they look like something we want to take care of. And sharks look, their teeth are menacing. They don't look like they should be cuddled. They look very fierce. And especially in pop culture, there's a lot of things that have happened there. Jaws, for example, completely devastated the shark population, because after Jaws came out, people were literally going out in kayaks and boats and killing sharks just because of the movie, which is awful. And that the people that actually, the writer of Jaws, ended up starting a shark conservation movement. But I digress. So I decided to make a bunch of sharks that looked like polar bears, panda bears, and koala bears to start the conversation about, if sharks were fuzzy and cute, would you care about them more? And I think that people really grasp onto that. And if you look about how people learn, everybody learns in different ways. So I think reaching people in a sense of art can connect with them, because saying, oh, you should care about sharks, people might not get that. But once you put in front of them a giant, cute, fuzzy thing, they're like, oh, yeah, maybe if it was fuzzy, I probably would care. I mean, we have all these relief funds for polar bears and koala bears and panda bears. And yes, panda bears are super cute, and I do follow the Panda Bear channel on YouTube. But sharks I think they're super cute. Some of them are adorable. I mean, the goblin shark, if you ever Googled the goblin shark, it's horrifying. But every shark has its place, and we need them in our ecosystem, and they are an apex predator. And without them, the entire ecosystem becomes unbalanced, and it's going to affect us, and it's already affecting us. So that is what fuzzy sharks mean.
So what is an apex predator, and why, from a conservation standpoint, are sharks important?
An apex predator is, so if you have obviously a triangle, you have your apex predator at the top, and everything trickles down. So you have the shark that eats the fish, and the fish eats the smaller fish, and the fish eats the plankton. And the minute that you take any one of those pieces out, it disrupts the balance. And that means that other species either become overpopulated or underpopulated, and it affects the plants, the water, chemicals, everything no longer functions the way it should. And, right now, between finning and overfishing, bycatch, chemicals, reef bleaching, even just tourism, our oceans are in a serious issue. And that's not even bringing into the debate about global warming, because that's very political. There's people that believe that it's an issue, but it's not. We have so many other issues that are hurting our oceans that affect us day to day.
If you were to talk to a bunch of newbies who don't know a lot about ocean conservation, what are some of those things that are important to you, and some things that we should attend to or know in terms of being able to make effect or an awareness that's important to you?
I would say that even I've found that people in the inland states that aren't, coastal or near the water, they don't understand how plastic affects the oceans. Everybody is getting upset because, I know, especially in Ohio, Giant Eagle for a hot minute had banned plastic bags, and that you were supposed to bring your own fabric bag. Mm-hmm. And now, obviously, because of COVID, they've retracted bags, and even the rings that go on top of soda cans. Those things, the way that we consume them so much at such high numbers that they don't always end up in a landfill. That just because you're in an inland state doesn't mean that's not touching the ocean. And everybody can do a little bit to make a difference. And I think that would be the one thing that I would take away. Like, I've moved all my straws over to plastic or metal straws. I mean, that's just a super simple thing. When I go to a restaurant, if they give me one, I try to tell them, like, no, I don't need one. Because at the end of the day, if you think about all those straws that you get in a glass of water that you might not even touch, all that has to go in the garbage. And at some point, WALL-E is real. Like the movie WALL-E, someday, that movie was created for the possibility that this is where we could end up. We just create so much trash. And if you can make a difference within your own household, that then can affect your little community, your state, and the country and the world.
So behind you, I see the fuzzy shark that you're generously giving away. I also see I don't know, it looks like a
This,
superhero and some other stuff going on behind you. What is that?
this is a shark armor piece. It is knitted crochet wire, and then underneath is a stainless steel silk yarn that is knitted. And the concept behind this piece would be that a shark would have armor to protect itself from being finned. So that's would be a nice little piece to put on a shark.
And so you're using art, the concept of a fin armor, to then educate folks about finning and people removing
Yeah.
the fins and just dropping the shark back in the water.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And then this piece here is a art quilt. When I had graduated, I got into making art quilts because that's a whole genre of art in itself. And this one is about bycatch. When there's long line fishing that happens where ships drop in miles of netting to catch a specific species of fish for our consumption, there's also large mammals that get stuck in them, and they don't care. Like, they'll get caught in the nets and they just die, and many times fishermen either don't care to get them out because obviously it's time and money, or they just can't get to them quick enough. And then the other piece is actually from a series that I did after college once I started sewing. It's a pinup girl series. This was the first one in the series, and which I brought one to one of the art exchanges at one time, the Witch.
Yeah.
And my concept behind that was I was sick of seeing skinny, pretty women doing like bullshit tasks. So I made a line of awesome, badass women that are doing badass things. And the first one in the series was obviously a cool chick with sharks. And I have a bunch of them, and I've done some celebrity ones as well, to kind of talk to the idea that we have women across all areas of life that are really successful. And it's not about just beauty, but it's about the brain and, talents and skill, that we're not just females that wear lingerie and can vacuum.
Do you have a favorite shark? Is goblin shark your favorite, or?
My favorite is actually the nurse shark. I think nurse sharks look like puppies. I think that they are so adorable, and hammerheads, because they are so unique in the way that they are, and not to mention how they. They swim in herds. To me, they're very majestic. So those would be my favorites. I know the go-to answer is like great white, but I don't know. I like nurse and hammerhead.
I like those. I think the hammerhead it's an interesting shark to watch, and anytime you see a hammerhead outside of the water for whatever reason, somebody catches it, put it back. People are amazed at looking at those sharks.
Oh, they're just so stunning. A few months ago, I was able to dive at Epcot at Disney, and they have, I think, maybe 10 different species of sharks. And right now I haven't been able to swim with hammerheads in the open, but they did have scallop hammerheads in that tank. And it was just, like arm's length, I was away from a hammerhead, and there's just no other feeling. It's just, they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing.
So Fuzzy Shark, give us kind of your elevator pitch on just Fuzzy Shark. And then I want to talk a little bit about Design Pod before we kind of wrap things up.
Yeah, so Fuzzy Sharks has evolved into, it used to be called Ocean 4, but because of, if you're even into oceans a little bit, the company 4Ocean, and they collect plastic in the oceans and then make bracelets. And I was getting a lot of calls asking where my bracelet is. Can I order a bracelet? So I realized I should rebrand. I rebranded with Fuzzy Sharks, and it is all about rethinking and saving sharks through artwork. And the goal is to, whether it is a gallery, because I plan to have more, I'm working on some new gallery pieces, to have a gallery line that can be within, that can be shown at a school or an aquarium or a corporate event or an actual gallery, and then also have some consumer products with graphics, because being a graphic designer, have some swag type items to sell to get that message out there. So that would be the goals, to use art, whether it be gallery or consumer goods, to spread the message of shark conservation.
That feels like a pretty important passion, and one that is uniquely yours. And I absolutely love. You're like, have you been called Shark Girl? Because if you haven't, you probably should be, because it's.
Yeah, yes, I have been called that as well. And anytime that I tell someone what I do, they're like, "Oh, that's cool. That's different. That's cool." Like, people are very, very intrigued by it because it's very random. Like, especially when I tell them that I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio, they're like, "What happened to you? Like, you should be like rooting for the Browns and snowboarding or something, not trying to save the Sharks."
I mean, I love the uniqueness. I love the history behind it. I love hearing about all the way back to childhood when you're folding things, because I think it's all connected, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really is. And I feel so incredibly blessed to have the people in my life that I have that have encouraged me and supported me. I mean, I think we're all finding out in this COVID time that we are a species that need each other. And I wouldn't be where I am without my family and friends that have supported me the entire way. And that's one of the best things.
Well, Tim Herron, who is the pretentious artist from Cleveland, of course, he's been keeping this the portrait drawing on Friday Nights Alive, says that he had put images of sharks in his pieces many times over the years.
Nice.
And that's so the two of you, I think, at least share that in common too.
Yes.
So tell us about Design Pod, because it feels. I mean, obviously, when you take, if somebody just hears it, and a lot of folks that are watching might not understand what Design Pod is or what the logo looks like. So walk us through it as if we knew nothing about Design Pod.
Okay, so Design Pod Studio is a creative agency that offers creative services from website, branding, marketing, and social media, basically designed for print and web. And I structured the company, so I have contractors that I have handpicked to be a part of the team. And depending on the project, we pull in that person, and it allows us to offer our clients and customers and partners lower rates versus a large agency, because we don't have the overhead of an office. And you get to work with the people that you meet. And we have clients, everything from self-defense sprays, because we're back in that industry, to actual an ocean conservation company that we work for. And it's very cool to be able to work with a diverse group of clients versus just working for one, which is what I've been used to.
And even the logo itself, Design Pod, has
a whale in it. And so Design Pod, we're like a pod of whales. So I have brought together a group of people like a pod of whales to come together to make some really awesome artwork to help other businesses achieve their business goals through marketing and design.
How do people get in contact with you?
You can go to Design Pod Studio it's designpod.studio is our website. And then there's also fuzzysharks.com. I have a few different websites. And then for my other artwork and my father's artwork, it's adanich.design.
It looks like Beth is attaching your websites right now.
Wonderful.
So
Thank you.
People can just click in as they're watching. If you had to talk to your younger self, so that's taken Jess 2020, and you were going to talk to your younger self, I don't know, maybe college years, maybe just fresh out of college, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh my gosh. And it's probably the same advice that I would give myself today. I can be kind of stubborn. It would be, don't be so hard on yourself. Trust your gut, and things will work out. I think artists and designers are specifically programmed to be extra critical of themselves. And I do that every single day. And I know that if I had, just chilled the hell out. It probably would have been easier in college. And as I get older, I'm learning to do that better day by day. But I think it's something that's good to remember, that at the end of the day, just trust your gut, follow your heart, and things will work out. I mean, you got to put the work in, but to not be so hard on yourself.
You have an amazing story. We appreciate you sharing it, all the way from childhood to Cleveland Institute of Art to your time as an author to creating incredible stuff. And for those of you who may not know it, I think we own 4 or 5 pieces.
Yes.
And we love them. Your soft sculpture to your passion for shark conservation and ocean conservation as well. I mean, we determined that you would save the manatee, the porpoise, and the shark early on in our interview. But I mean, it's an incredible story, and we are excited to hear more. Jess, if you could show us one more time that fuzzy shark, because anybody who shares anytime between now and next week, you'll get a piece of a soft sculpture made by Jess, and she's going to drop that in the mail and get that, and you'll have a great big surprise to open up at your house in a few weeks. Jess, thank you for sharing. Please share what you're up to in that Tuesday at 7 Facebook group, because now that you've interviewed, people are going to say, I wonder what Jess is working on. And we hope we can do that.
I will. I really appreciate this. And everyone who's watching, I appreciate your time tonight. This has been really, really awesome. Well,
thank you again. Share out, and in a week, somebody's gonna see their name out there. For those who are joining in, we're from last week. We gave away an Apocalypse mask, and that was a unique piece by Alan Hops and George Ball. I'm reaching your name in. Your name was drawn, so we'll get in touch so that Apocalypse mask is sent to your residence. And Jess, we are really excited to hear what's in store for you after this lockdown ends. And it's kind of funny. I'm looking at stickers right now, and I have this Jaws sticker. But to hear how your passion is and your residence in Tampa is going to affect what you do here and sharks in general.
Thank you. I appreciate that too. I have a really good feeling about it, so I'm excited.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again. Everybody have a great week, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Bye.